I'll never forget being a new speech therapist working with a preschool age student in an outpatient facility. And this outpatient did not really love coming to therapy. They were not excited about the activities that I had planned, and they were not yet speaking. And they were autistic. And I went to my supervisor and said, how can I reach this student? I did not learn this in graduate school. And I feel like my plan for therapy is a mystery. And my supervisor said, work on joint attention. And while that was great information, I just didn't have a step-by-step framework on what that meant and how to embed it into my therapy. So if you are working with younger students who are autistic or who are not yet speaking, who are hard to engage, we are going to break down the idea of joint attention. I am going to define it for you, a little bit of brush up from graduate school if you're a speech therapist. And I'm going to tell you how I embed this into my therapy sessions, how I goal set for this in my therapy sessions, how I take data, and how I build a connection with my students that is the first step for more robust communication. I cannot wait to share this information today.
You're listening to Autism Outreach Podcast, a podcast full of ready-to-use strategies to help those with autism strengthen their communication skills. Here's your host, Rose Griffin of ABA Speech, a speech therapist and board-certified behavior analyst who shares tips you can use in your next therapy session.
I can't wait to talk with you today all about getting started in therapy with autistic students who are younger. So today we're going to be talking about learner engagement. We're going to be discussing joint attention specifically. So if you've heard that term before and you just don't feel very comfortable working on that skill, or if you're somebody who is helping to support little ones and you feel like you're not sure how to get started, this is going to be a really good episode for us. I remember back in the day when I started as a speech therapist, I was working with a student who was younger and had high support needs, had autism. And the student really didn't love my speech therapy sessions that I had planned. And so I was really struggling with learner engagement. And I remember saying to my supervisor, what am I doing wrong here? Like, what should I be focusing on? And my supervisor at the time said, work on joint attention. And I just wasn't really sure what that even meant. Of course, I had gone over it in my coursework. Of course, I had learned about it. It's one thing to learn about something. It's another thing to really be doing it in our clinical practice. And so I came out with a course this past year that's ASHA approved, but great for anybody as well. And it's called Start Communicating Today. And so one of the topics that we really discuss and what I'm going to focus on today is that foundational skill of joint attention. So I talk a lot about shared activities, whether I'm talking with a parent doing a consult or whether I'm doing my supervision for future BCBAs or speech therapy assistants, I am always discussing that connection before communication. It's so very, very important. And I think it's something that takes time. And I think it's something that needs to be a major focus of our intervention for younger children. We had Megan Miller on, who's a wonderful BCBA, and she talked about the Early Start Denver model. And that's definitely a tool that has a lot of really helpful information. And I think what's so important to talk about is that a lot of the information that I'm going to share today, and we're going to get right into it, but there are things that I really learned out in the field. So in my private practice, ABA Speech, I see a lot of preschool age students who are not yet speaking and are autistic. And so I work a lot in the home with parents about what is joint attention, how can we embed it across our students' day, and why is it so important? Because I know that parents and providers, us as providers, really want to start making sure that our student is going to communicate. And whether that means talking, or whether that means AAC or sign language or pictures, we know that we want communication to start now. And so one of the things that I always talk about is joint attention. And so, joint attention really means shared attention between at least two people on an object or event, with both people knowing that they are attending to that. I think sometimes as providers, it can be hard to know how to goal set for that. Most of you have probably know, but I have an autism IEP goal bank that is on my website, abaspeech.org. And that is a really important resource. And I just updated it recently to include template goals for joint attention. Now, I do that because I think that sometimes we're not setting those types of goals for our students. And I think that they're so very important for the scope and sequence of getting started with communication and really just building that bond with our students. Because we know there's a strong relationship between joint attention and both receptive and expressive language skills. I have a student that I see in the home environment who has autism. And this student, when I first started coming over, was his attention was very fleeting. He would sometimes come to the door when I was coming over, sometimes he didn't. This was almost a year ago now. Now he comes over. He's excited for me to be there. He comes to the door and says, "Hi, Miss Rose." It's very cute to hear that little voice because there wasn't a voice before. And so a major focus of his therapy was joint attention. And that was not what everybody on the team was doing, because this student was getting services from another speech therapist. And that speech therapist was restricting the student's movement and having him sit in a chair where he was actually strapped into the chair. And I just talked with the parents and said, that's not how I provide therapy. We really should never, ever be doing that for a child unless it's something very specific like feeding therapy or sometimes with apraxia, with prompting and things like that. I think that you need to do that, but that's definitely not my area of expertise. But for general speech therapy, we should never be doing that. I want the student to want to spend time with me. I want to be the fun thing that the student is excited about. And so we know that that connection before communication is how we're going to excite our student about using their voice and showing them that their communication is powerful. And so today, what I want to do is I want to give you ideas on how you can work on joint attention. So joint attention is something that we as therapists, we as providers can work on with our students. And it's definitely something, if you're listening and you're a parent, that you can embed across your students' day as well. And so we are going to talk about joint attention and how you can work on it through playing with toys, how you can work on it through songs. I might be doing a little singing. I apologize in advance. And we're also going to be talking about it through literacy. I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite books that I love to use in my sessions. I have an entire module dedicated in our course, Start Communicating Today, all about materials, because I get asked that a lot. And I've been providing some speech therapy assistant supervision in Washington and been consulting with some ABA centers in that state because I'm licensed there, which has been super fun. And one of the main things that we've been working on is, if I'm working with a clinic and maybe they have 5 locations, making sure that we have cohesive materials that providers feel comfortable using. And often these materials are going to be used to work on joint attention. Okay. So some of the things that I like to use for play, and these are not an exhaustive list, but they're just things that I love and enjoy and my students seem to really like, is having a car and a car track. This can look any which way. And these are usually things that you can pick up if you want to get them brand new on Amazon. That's great. A lot of times when I was first starting out in the field and was trying to be a little bit more frugal, I would go to garage sales or I would go to Goodwill and I would buy these things there. Mommy Swap now, these are just Facebook groups, oftentimes where people get together and sell things. So there's a lot of different ways to get these toys. I have people in my neighborhood who know I have a private practice. And so sometimes they're like, hey, can I donate this to ABA Speech? Of course. So a car and a car track is very, very fun. I try to make sure that I have multiple cars because with the car and the car track, what you want to do is you want to have the car go down the car track. If your car track has a little area to get gas, you want to use the gas. If you have a garage door, you want to open it up. And the thing with joint attention is we're not making the student participate. This isn't a forced interaction. This is a, hey, this car track and these toys are so much fun. Look, I have extra cars. Here's a car. Why don't you put it down the track? And this is the thing I coach parents on and other providers is that this is not, it's a semi-structured way to work on therapy. I call it semi-structured because I typically am not doing this at a table. I am typically sitting at a chair. Typically sitting in somebody's living room. Now, you don't have to do that because every work environment is going to be different. So if you're working with kindergarten students and you're like, no, everybody has a workstation, that's completely fine in the classroom. I'm just giving you my experience of how I'm working on it now. So that's the idea. We're motivating the student. If they want to engage for 30 seconds and then they go away and they come back, that's okay. We're just going to note that on our data sheet, that that's the level of engagement. And if we know that at baseline, our student is attending for about a minute, but we would really love them to be able to attend for about 3 minutes because maybe that's developmentally appropriate for them, then we're going to start there. And that's where we're going to goal set. In our IEP, we're going to say at a baseline, the student is engaging with the therapist for 1 minute, and that our goal is that they would engage in shared activities through toys, through music, through literacy-based activities for a duration of 3 minutes without prompts, because that's really our foundational skill is this idea of a shared activity. Another thing that my students love is playing with mini objects. If you have not seen what a mini object is, I have made some videos about them on Instagram and TikTok. And you can just Google mini object. They're just exactly what they sound like. They're tiny little objects. And kids love these. They're super fun. You can get them on Etsy. You can get them on Amazon. There are companies that just make mini objects. I have this really cool toy from Lakeshore Learning that works more on matching, but it has a lot of mini objects. I have also used my daughter's old Shopkins, which she doesn't really like to play with anymore, but I've been using them for therapy. And these mini objects can be that shared activity. Is super fun. Sometimes I'll just hide the mini objects. I'll put them in a little bag and I shake, shake, shake. And then the student wants to see what's in that bag. And then I pull it out. And there's that shared interaction, right? They're intrigued. They want to know what is in that bag. And you shake, shake, shake. And then you give them a couple mini objects and they play with them or you play with them together. And then you put some more in the bag, shake, shake, shake. And they want different mini objects. And you can do that type of play routine, which is very, very fun. And another way to work on joint attention. So we have the cars and the car track. We have mini objects. Another one of my go-to toys, if I was putting together my dream therapy room, is a farm set. I love having a farm set. So a farm set is typically going to be a farm and it's going to come with different animals. So a pig and a cow and a sheep and farmers. And those can be really, really fun because you can have the animals going into the farm. You can have the animals going out of the farm. You can talk about the farm. And that actually brings up another kind of an aside is when you're engaging in these shared activities, we want to use simple language And we want to use statements. So let's say that I have the farm toy and I have the pig. I might say, oh, I have the farm. I love playing with the farm. And I have a pig. Oh, I have a pig. And the pig says, that's probably what I would do. And maybe I have my student and I have the cow and I give my student the cow and I say, you have a cow. The cow says moo. I would be using simple language for, especially thinking for students who are not yet speaking. The one thing we want to be cognizant of is we don't want to bombard our student with questions. And this is something that for some reason I think is our natural motivation in these moments where maybe our student's not yet communicating and we're not sure how to engage. And it feels like maybe we're not getting anything done, but we are. This idea of shared activity, of engaging with our student, of building this rapport, of having fun, because that's the thing we want to remember, that therapy should be fun and functional. So if you show the farm toy to your student and they're like, I do not like this, and maybe they're not saying that, but they're saying that with their behavior, that's okay. I always tell parents, it's okay. We're not going to make them sit. A lot of parents say, okay, we have this toy, time to sit. You have to sit, time to talk with Miss Rose. And I just coach parents and say, you know what? That's really not the point of this. The point of this is for us to engage and for him to be motivated to engage. I say him because this particular client is a male that I'm seeing, but that's the idea. So sometimes we have to work on that parent coaching component as well. And I think over time, you just feel more comfortable saying that, because over time, you'll see the progression, just like we talk about and start communicating today of, okay, we're working on these foundational skills, and these are our first steps to communication. We may not be communicating verbally or in any way now, besides our behavior, which doesn't mean problem behavior, just our engagement, that behavior. But this is going to put us on the path to communication. This is going to put us on the path to learning more advanced communication skills. Okay, so for play, another thing that you might want to think about for play is a shape sorter. Some students like playing with a shape sorter if they really, really love shapes. I have another student who really loves the alphabet. And so we have an alphabet puzzle that's a very large puzzle, and it has a puzzle piece for every letter of the alphabet. And so I have a student that really loves that. And that could be, a 5 to 10 minute activity. That's all about joint attention. I have another student who we have played with animals, stuffed animals, and play food. And we feed the animals. And that's been a really fun way to work on joint attention. One last toy I want to talk about is baby dolls. I have 3 kids of my own. They are all in school age now. So I have a lot of toys that are just in my basement, and part of our basement is finished. Part of it is storage. And my husband always wants to get rid of the toys in the basement. And I always tell him, no, do not touch those, because I am still seeing clients in my private practice. And I really love doing that. And I need these toys because most of my kids are preschool age that I see in that private practice. So I think that's one of the superpowers that we have as providers, is being able to use toys to work on a variety of things. So, every student is going to be into something different, but these are just some ideas if you're thinking about working on joint attention that way. Okay, so those are ways that we can work on joint attention, having a shared activity, using toys, using play-based strategies. Another way that we can work on joint attention is by looking at a book. Okay. So by looking at a book, we can do a lot of different things. I can get the book out of my bag. Oftentimes I'll bring the same book maybe 2 to 3 weeks in a row if the student likes it. And that repetition seems to be familiar for my current students I'm working with now. And, I get the book out. There's some suspense. The kids really love my therapy bag. Each kid that I see has their own therapy bag, COVID. And I want to make sure we're not contaminating germs and all that good stuff. And so I'll get the book out of my bag. and they're excited to see what it is. And then I like to choose books. I definitely have a couple favorites that are my go-tos in therapy because they are really, really interactive. Okay. My number one book is probably Pete the Cat and his white shoes. So if you haven't heard of Pete the Cat, that's a great, great book. And it's super fun because it has repetitive lines. Pete loves his white shoes. Pete sings a little song. And then Pete gets himself in all these different scenarios where he's stepping in all these different things. So, the phrase, "oh no," is in it. And the kids love that because with each turn of the page, Pete is stepping in blueberries and his shoes turn blue. He's stepping in strawberries and his shoes turn red. He's getting himself into all these different situations. But it's really, really fun for joint attention because the kids are really intrigued. And I use, if my kids like it, an animated voice to keep their attention, to keep them engaged, to keep us in this activity together. Another book that I absolutely love for this age group is Brown Bear. And it has repetitive lines too. Brown bear, what do you see? I see a red horse looking at me. I can't remember what it is right now because I don't have it by me, but it might be red bird. But Brown Bear is really great because it has that repetitive line. Brown bear, what do you see? And that was really cool. I brought that book over to one of my clients' homes, and this client sees me as the outside speech therapist, but he also goes to school and he also does some ABA. And so I had never brought over Brown Bear, but he had seen it in his ABA training. And it was really cool because he was super excited to see Brown Bear. And I love the fact that they were using that too. So that familiarity is really nice. So Pete the Cat is great. Brown Bear is another one of my very favorites. And then the other one that I like, two more. The Very Hungry Caterpillar is a really cool book because there's this page on the Very Hungry Caterpillar where he eats all these things like that he shouldn't have eaten. He has, sausage and he has, cake, and then he gets a tummy ache. And it's a really cute book and kids really like it. It's simplistic. It's familiar. That's a nice one. And then the last one I want to share that I like to incorporate into my sessions is Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom is an amazing book. And one of the reasons that I really love it so much is that I do have a lot of students who are really into the alphabet. And so when I first turn the page for Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, so whether I'm working with a preschool client that's right here and I'm in their home, or whether I'm providing teletherapy to, students in an ABA clinic in Washington State, it still has that same really cool effect. If your kids are into the alphabet, the first page of Chicka Chicka Boom Boom is the entire alphabet. So it's kind of using a book and also kind of using a song, which we're going to kind of talk about next. But I always start Chicka Chicka Boom Boom by getting the book out, talking about it, and then I sing the alphabet and I point to the different letters of the alphabet. I do this for a couple reasons. Some of my students really just love music. Some of my students are verbalizing, and so they can actually fill in the blank. And I use this really great strategy of just pausing. Okay. So I might go, "Oh, I have Chicka Chicka Boom Boom." And I get it out of my bag and I say, "Okay, we're going to start with the alphabet song today. A, B, C." Okay. And all this time I'm pointing to the letters. And then when I get to D, I pause. And I have some students who may not be communicating in their everyday with their parents yet, or their teachers or their providers, but they really love the alphabet and they're familiar with that song. And so that's a time we can get some back and forth engagement, which is really, really cool too. And then I go on and I read the book. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom is really cool because it has that repetitive line, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. So, if my student is not yet verbalizing, I'll just read the book and I'll pause and I point to different things in the book. If my student is verbalizing, it's a time for them to maybe fill in the blank for some of those. And as you keep bringing the book, a couple sessions, and maybe the parents get excited and they want to buy it too, it becomes familiar. and your kids will be engaged. And I think that's the thing to think about is when we're taking data in our sessions, because I'd be, remiss if I didn't talk about data collection, is that, we might have a student who sees the book, is excited for 30 seconds, runs across the room, comes back. And I always say, we're not going to make them come back. We're going to continue to read the story. We're going to use our animated voice. We're going to use simplistic phrases. And over time, we are going to log our data and we're going to say, oh my goodness, when I first started coming, so-and-so was only with me for 30 seconds of this book. We're on a totally different book now, but look, now they sit right by me. Mom is there. The student is sitting with me and we're reading a book together for 4 minutes. And they're enjoying it and we're engaged and they're filling in the blank. And that's really the growth that we see. But we know that we need to capture that data during each and every session to be able to analyze it like that. So those are some of the books that I love to use in my therapy sessions. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is how can we work on joint attention? How can we work on this idea of connection before communication, shared activities? And these are the ways that I talk about these things within our sessions. So that would be with music. I really love incorporating music into sessions with little ones. I have a really terrible singing voice, but my clients don't seem to mind. If there's parents around, I might be a little nervous, but I do it. I sing. And usually what I do is I usually have some type of visual that goes along with the song. Not always. Okay. Not always, but I did a long time ago when I was working in Austin, Texas, for an outpatient clinic. I just made completely black and white, but they are laminated, a visual for Old MacDonald, which is a farm and it has the different animals. And then I made a visual for Wheels on the Bus that just has a bus and it has the different characters you talk about. And I am thinking about, and maybe by the time this airs, I'm thinking about having my designer put together a product that we would sell on our TPT store that would be some of the simple songs I'm going to talk about today, along with visuals, because the visuals I'm using right now are things that I just created about 10 years ago on my own using Google Images. So you can definitely do that too. And so I just laminate these things Velcro because sometimes students really do like that. So I'm going to share with you a couple of the songs that I like to use in my therapy sessions. So Old MacDonald, I love using Old MacDonald. That is a wonderful song. There's so many things you can do. So sometimes I'll have all my little pieces out, which are the different animals. And I'll say, Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on this farm, he had and maybe I pick the first animal. Okay, maybe it's a sheep. And then I sing that part. And then maybe I let my student pick the next animal. Or I have another student who loves to tear the animal pictures off the Velcro scene. Okay, is that sensory wise, that might feel good for them to tear it off. So you kind of have to gauge what your student is going to enjoy there. So definitely Old MacDonald. Another song that's one of our fan favorites is Wheels on the Bus. I love Wheels on the Bus. I do have a visual that I created many moons ago, but I'm going to try to update that and make that a product that would be available. But Old MacDonald is really Wheels on the Bus. Sorry, Wheels on the Bus is super, super fun because it has motions too. So, the wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. And so the student, I remember one of my students, I was seeing him in his home. We had a mini object bus. It's kind of all come together here. And he liked that. And then we started working on Wheels on the Bus. And I'll never forget the first time that we worked on it, he was not interested, not interested in that song at all. He stayed with me for maybe 15 seconds and then he kind of left. His parent, this is when we first started working together, was upset. Like, oh, you have to come over, and I was like, oh, let's just wait. Let's see what he's doing. He went and he got this little ride along bus that he had in his house that I couldn't see. It wasn't in the living room. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. So then he just kind of hung with me. He was on his bus toy. And then we did that song for maybe 3 weeks after that. And towards the end, he was doing the motions. He was an emergent communicator. So he was using some of the words. He loved it when the baby on the bus goes, wah, wah, wah. So he thought that was hilarious. Every kid is going to be into something different, right? So we have to give them these opportunities to see what they love and enjoy. So Old MacDonald, I love Wheels on the Bus. I also love Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. That's a super fun one because it has motions. And so these are some super fun ways that you can work on joint attention. So I know that we talk about joint attention as speech therapists a lot in our coursework. And sometimes when you get into the real world and you're working with a student who's not engaging, and you think to yourself, how am I going to reach this student? Because traditional speech therapy does require some structured sitting. And I will have you know that a lot of my students who are at this emerging communicator level, where they're just learning readiness skills, where they're just embarking on learning foundational skills. This idea of joint attention is so very important. And I think sometimes we, especially as public school therapists, feel nervous about getting data and making sure that we can capture this on the IEP. So I'm going to include in the show notes my autism IEP goal bank, but you can get it right on the front page of abaspeech.org because I have updated it. So if you are one of the tens of thousands of people that have downloaded this resource, make sure that you look at it again and download it again because I have updated the resource. And it includes information on how to goal set for joint attention. And then thinking to yourself, if you're feeling stuck in sessions with your students, thinking about bringing it back to this. Have you built a rapport with your student? Have you taken time to work on joint attention? Because this is really what is a foundation for other types of communication. And we really do have to share with other providers. We have to share with parents, potentially other speech therapists, that this is really going to be a cornerstone of our sessions for early learners. I'm excited that you logged in today. Make sure that you reach out if you have any questions about joint attention. Make sure to check the show notes, which is just right at abaspeech.org. Or if you're watching on YouTube, it should be in the description. And I will have my IEP goal bank listed there, which is very, very important. And if you want to go more in depth on the idea of how to help younger students, make sure that you look at our course that is ASHA approved, but it is for other professionals. It is for parents as well. You get a certificate. It's called Start Communicating Today. And I talk way more about joint attention. I show tutorials, I show videos, and I talk about an array of things, all dedicated to helping preschool age autistic students and toddlers get started on their journey to communication. See you next time. Thanks for listening to Autism Outreach. If you enjoyed the show today, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode full of actionable strategies you can use in your therapy room. Write a review too. That would mean so much to me. I always love hearing from you. Have a specific topic that you want included on a future show? Reach out over on Instagram, ABA Speech by Rose, or visit me at www.abaspeech.org.